Welcome to yet again 3 cold cases that will make you question humanity's existence. The complex mind of a killer and the insanity within their minds that persuades them into doing cruel and sinister acts. Prepare yourself as we submerge you into the dark world of crimes. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
A United States Marine Corps. In the crucible of conflict and chaos amidst the thundering roar of battle, there exists a force unmatched in its tenacity, its bravery, and its unyielding resolve. They are the epitome of resolve, the guardians of freedom, and the very embodiment of courage. However, what occurs when the one you trusted turns out to be the one doing the crime? The one you considered to be a hero of the nation becomes the nation's problem. The Summer Baldwin. This case would surely be considered as one of the goriest cases to ever live into existence. Years of research may be required to discover and comprehend what runs in a serial killer's mind and thoughts. Many of the perpetrators had varied degrees of mental illness, different upbringings, and were subjected to violence as kids. They are conscious of their activities nevertheless. These people frequently present as completely normal to those around them, keeping them unaware that they are dealing with a vicious killer inside of them. Rosendo Rodriguez, a modest young guy who served in the U.S. Marine Corps, was the catalyst for it all. He was characterized by witnesses who were acquainted with him and gave testimony during his trial as a kind, responsible, and kind man who wouldn't harm anyone. However, soon it became evident that he had brutally murdered an innocent young life of this lady and artistically and uniquely disposed of her body. To fully comprehend this noisy and intricate case, let's go back in time and examine the criminal's early years to see how he became the monster that he is. September 13th, 2005. On the outskirts of Lubbock, Texas, among the normal assortment of multicolored rubbish, a city utility worker going about his daily business at a nearby landfill discovered something out of the ordinary. Curious, he opened a large black bag that appeared strangely undamaged and hefty, expecting to find something precious. To his horror, the first thing he saw when he unzipped the suitcase was a woman's well-groomed hand. The garbage worker quickly stopped the garbage truck that had brought the grisly suitcase and called the police after fully opening the suitcase and finding the naked body of a young woman with her arms crossed around her neck and her knees drawn up to her chest. It was nearly hard to find any evidence at a huge metropolitan dump, but the detectives were hoping to uncover any kind of clue as to the identity of the lady and how she got herself into that position. The landfill was promptly cordoned off, and the truck and its contents were thoroughly examined. No identification or personal items were found in the suitcase. The girl's small tattoo of the word Summer on her leg was the sole distinguishing characteristic on the body. While forensic experts worked to identify the victim and find her killer, medical examiners were left to determine the cause of death. Later on, they've distinguished that her cause of death was positional asphyxiation, although the woman was still alive when she was placed in the suitcase. She suffocated because of the small area and tight space. An autopsy revealed several injuries inflicted while she was alive, including signs of sexual abuse. Summer Baldwin, 29, was identified as the victim by fingerprint analysis submitted to the national database in the United States. By the time her corpse was discovered, she had been dead for nearly an entire day. Summer Baldwin. Who was she? Summer Baldwin was born in Washington in 1976. She was well known for her kind, open, and sweet personality. She was also a bright student with a lively personality and many friends. Summer had ambitious goals for her life and enrolled in a community college after high school, but later found her university schoolwork challenging. With the help of her parents, Summer relocated to Lubbock in the hopes of starting over after friends welcomed her to Texas for a change of pace and prospects. It's unclear when Summer's life took a turn for the worst, but she progressively developed an addiction to alcohol and illegal substances without asking her family for support. As her addiction grew, she lost her job and established friends with people who had criminal histories. Consequently, she turns her back to all her dreams and trades it all to become an escort. Unbeknownst to her parents of her cruel path, they were fooled to believe that their daughter was slowly making her dreams come true. But horror would eventually struck her parents when they later learned of their daughter's horrific murder case. Summer Baldwin was a crucial witness in a significant federal prosecution involving counterfeiting. This suggested she may have been the victim of a gang-related murder, which piqued the FBI's curiosity, and led to a closer examination. The first person the police met with was Rebecca, the best friend of the late Summer Baldwin. Rebecca told her about Summer's profession and recalled many of her lovers, one of whom had been violent, had touched her a lot, and had followed her about after they broke up. The initial suspect in the crime was identified as this individual. That same day, Summer's ex-boyfriend was taken into custody and brought to the police, although he vehemently denied having anything to do with the case. Furthermore, he seemed sincere in his shock and sorrow at hearing of her passing. His drunken involvement in a bar brawl the night before the catastrophe gave him a solid alibi. The police were forced to free the first and only suspect at that point. A second acquaintance, and in a sense, co-worker of the deceased, gave the investigation far more crucial clues. A woman by the name of Marjorie saw Summer the night before the murder, and they even spoke briefly. On September 11th, Marjorie recalled, a red van pulled up to the convenience store, from which a young, fit man with a Latino appearance got out and probably went shopping. While this was going on, Summer noticed her buddy emerge from the passenger side to welcome her. She informed Marjorie that this man was her client as an escort, whom she had met with twice in recent days. When the man left the store, he took the wheel, and Summer quickly climbed back into the van with him. After that, Marjorie carried on with her day without noticing the direction the van was traveling in or the location of the couple's planned route. She added that she had never seen the man before and assumed he was not from the area. The only description she could think of was that, because of the darkness outside and her own lack of light, he had very short hair, like a military man. This brand of suitcases was found to be offered in dozens of stores around the city, but because of the completely kept barcode, this particular massive model was only found in 2 locations. It looked like a strange suitcase that had become a young woman's coffin. Although it had rubbish and filth all over the outside, the wheels still appeared like new. The item seemed to be brand new due to the impeccable condition of the linings and all of the tags. The fact that the price tag's plastic connection was still in place indicates that the original owner of the luggage hadn't removed it. In the same part of the city where the girl was last seen alive, a Walmart store is where the find was found. 2 purchases were made. The first was in the afternoon, and the second purchase was made at approximately 2 a.m. Suspicious police officers got there immediately and demanded to see the store's CCTV footage because this seemed rather weird. Upon reviewing the video, they learned that the older couple who had bought the first bag were not at all suspicious because they could be found and could justify their purchase as a vacation item. Despite this, a young Latino guy who bought the second suitcase had a military-type physique, short hair, and a muscular frame. The possibility that this was the man the witness had claimed to have seen in the supermarket parking lot with the dead girl raised suspicions. The man also bought a pair of disposable gloves at the register. The exterior video cameras that were placed in the shop parking lot revealed more details. They captured the man packing up his luggage and placing it into a red van as he left. The police thought they had identified their culprit, as there were too many parallels. It was now only a matter of identifying and questioning this individual. Police quickly discovered that Rosendo Rodriguez, a U.S. Marine Corps reserve, was the owner of the vehicle. Rodriguez had never been arrested before and had no criminal record. He was lucky to have been in the unit for a few days for training, so finding Rodriguez was difficult at first because he wasn't staying at the hotel where his unit was located. However, after obtaining his information, police discovered that Rodriguez had taken out a sizable amount of money from an ATM at a different hotel. Rodriguez had most likely not slept at the hotel, where he used the ATM to pay for the gloves and bag. Rather, on September 11th, a Thomas Rodriguez who fit Rodriguez's description checked in. Fortuity backed the investigation when it turned out to be the same person going by a different name for unidentified reasons. Rodriguez had checked out of the hotel room he had rented, but it hadn't been cleaned yet, revealing important evidence such as dried blood-like splatters and brown stains on the walls and carpet. A new suitcase tag discovered next to the bed, and used contraceptives and disposable gloves in the trash. The dried blood in the room was identified as Summer's by forensic investigation, and Summer and Rodriguez's DNA were found on the gloves and contraception. Without a doubt, they had identified the murderer, but by the time Rodriguez left the city, they had all the information they needed to track him down. Born Rosendo Rodriguez III on March 26, 1980, in Wichita Falls, Texas, he was raised in a low-income family of Mexican immigrants. His father, who was described as aggressive and domineering, battled alcoholism and frequently mistreated his wife and kids. Rosendo was an aggressive child who frequently got into fights at school, but as he got older, he discovered how to control his rage. Following high school, he attended Texas Tech University, moved out from under his parents' roof, and worked as an office clerk and courier at a pizzeria before opting to enlist in the U.S. Marine Corps. Rodriguez was well-liked by ladies due to his physical attractiveness and well-educated background. His military colleagues characterized him as quiet, balanced, disciplined, and responsible. He was also viewed as a kind buddy who was always willing to provide a hand. When the police arrived at Rodriguez's San Antonio home on September 15th, he was composed and didn't seem to realize the seriousness of the situation. During the search, they discovered his laptop and cell phone. During the initial weeks of the interrogation, Rodriguez refused to comment and denied being involved in the murder of Summer Baldwin. However, the overwhelming amount of evidence against him led him to follow his attorney's advice and start making statements, presenting his version of events that differed significantly from the scenario developed by the forensic experts. Rodriguez started out by claiming that he had mistakenly reserved a hotel apart from his fellow service member. Only the name of the hotel chain they were meant to stay at, picked a hotel at random, and only found out the others were at a different location after checking in. He declined to move because the military command said it wasn't required, and he didn't give an explanation for his registration under a false identity. Rodriguez claimed to have met Summer Baldwin by coincidence on September 10th. That evening, he saw a blonde woman sitting on a bench by the road, covering her face with her hands as if she were crying. Intrigued and worried, he stopped to see if she was okay and needed help. Following their initial meeting, they proceeded to his hotel room where they had several drinks and spoke, but nothing intimate. Rosendo took her home the next morning, but they had made plans to get together that evening. At approximately 9 o'clock at night, he picked her up at the same place, and they proceeded to a store where Summer met her friend Marjorie. Rodriguez said that they had had consensual relations when they returned to the hotel. He was shocked, though, when Summer grabbed a knife out of her bag and began threatening him because he had no idea that he was seeing a call girl. He then took her weapon away. Rodriguez said he acted in self-defense and didn't want to injure Summer when she slumped on the bed and began vomiting and foaming at the mouth. She stopped breathing after a minute, and he thought she was dead. Panicking, he ran to the next store and got gloves and a suitcase. Then, knowing that the luggage would be carried to the landfill early the next morning, he brought it back to the hotel and dropped her corpse in the garbage. After that, he drove home after returning the rental car and checking out of the hotel. Numerous discrepancies in the suspect's statement led authorities to believe Rosendo Rodriguez was lying. For example, Marjorie, who met Summer the night of the murder in the parking lot, stated that Summer had made it clear to her that the guy was one of her clients, with whom they had previously met for a price. Rodriguez insists that their relationship was consensual, but evidence discovered on Summer's body implies that she was exploited. Probably since their first night was agreeable, Summer consented to see him again. Additionally, Rodriguez claimed that he only struck Summer in the face once to calm her down, but Summer died of a seizure. Baldwin had 30 new bruises on his head and body the night of the murder, in addition to many stab wounds. He also claimed that Baldwin was already dead, but authorities confirmed that she was still indeed alive when he packed her in the suitcase. When police seized his laptop computer, a review of his search history revealed an unsettling pattern. Rodriguez had been actively searching for information about a girl named Summer for 3 days prior to his arrest, paying attention to whether there was an ongoing search for her and whether her body had been found in a landfill. Rosendo Rodriguez, the defendant, was hoping to delay his execution until the very last moment, despite the overwhelming evidence against him and the enormity of his actions. The court found Rodriguez guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced him to death by lethal injection since Summer Baldwin was 3 months pregnant at the time of her terrible death. Rodriguez and his lawyers submitted many appeals, alleging errors and wrongdoing by the investigators, but each one was turned down. Rodriguez even maintained a blog about policy and criminal justice issues while he was incarcerated and awaited death. March 27, 2018.
San Antonio man known as the suitcase killer died by lethal injection tonight. Rosendo Rodriguez III was executed for the 2005 murder.
Nearly 10 years after his horrific deeds were discovered, Rosendo Rodriguez was finally executed. On the day after his 38th birthday, he was put to death in the Huntsville Penitentiary in Texas. This was the 4th execution in Texas and the 7th execution nationwide in 2018.
A friend, a beacon in the storm, a confidant in the chaos of life. They are the steady hand that guides us through our darkest moments, the laughter that echoes through the corridors of our memories. But what happens when that very friend becomes the architect of our tragedy? When their actions, perhaps unintended, lead us down a path of despair and heartache? How do we reconcile the betrayal of the one we trusted most? This is the terrible story of Keeley Bunker. Come and join us as we unravel this horrific crime. Born on September 7, 1999, Keeley Bunker, also known as Keeley, was an inheritance to her parents and an inspiration to her siblings. Her sister called her one of the most lively, kind, and beautiful beings this earth has ever seen, and her mother described her as a wonderful and beautiful daughter. She was a driven individual who overcame obstacles in her life to obtain a degree and pursue a career as a teacher. She had an interview to become an assistant teacher the day before she tragically died, but her bright future was dashed by her childhood buddy named Wesley Street. Wesley Street. Who was he? And why was this horrifying case being pursued? Keeley invited Wesley to her 20th birthday celebration on September 18, 2019, following the musician concert at the 02, because the two had known each other since they were in the same infant school. Although they were not the closest of friends, they remained in contact over the years. 2 days before, Keeley had even tweeted, "The only thing keeping me going is seeing H on Wednesday. Hopefully he'll notice me and we'll get married." This made her very excited for that day. Keeley met Wesley at Birmingham's new street station with her best friend Monique Regan the day of the event. The three went to a bar after the event and partied until 2:40 a.m. They stayed in Tamworth after that and returned there in a taxi. The last time Monique saw Keeley, she was a short walk from their alighting point. Monique had asked her to stay the night because of safety concerns, but Keeley didn't want to miss her job interview the following day, so she said, "I've got Wes. He'll walk me back. It will be okay." When Keeley failed to show up for the interview the following day, friends and relatives raised suspicion as to her whereabouts and attempted to get in touch with her, but to no avail. Around 5:30 p.m., Wesley was the last person the police saw of her, and he was taken in right away for interrogation after Keeley's father filed a missing persons report.
Yeah, it's not, obviously it's not.
No, no.
It's not what you want, is to be back in the police car.
I just feel like I'm getting the blame.
No one's blaming you.
You said when I was at the house that all I needed to do was speak to the officer.
There's a lot of people involved in what's happening, of which we're PCs, and there are people a lot higher up than us who are making decisions.
Yeah. I don't. Cause now, when you say you're going to take my phone, now I feel like you're blaming me.
No, we haven't.
When they came to a phone box close to his residence, the 20-year-old male claimed to have parted ways with her and left her to continue walking the rest of the path by herself. He pointed out the precise spot that the police had instructed him to take them to as part of the inquiry. He also showed the authorities the exact path they had taken to get there. The officers were extremely appreciative of his assistance and allowed him to leave. However, at approximately 9 o'clock at night, Keeley's body was found submerged in a pond at Wigington Park in Tamworth by her uncle Jason Brown, who was a member of the search party. She had been stripped of her garments, and her neck showed signs from being strangled to death. It was a terrifying scene, and Wesley was the first person the police arrested and began questioning.
Have you had any alcohol or drugs in the last 24 hours?
Yes, I've had alcohol.
What did you have and when did you have that?
Probably got from around about. Yeah, that's the time we arrived here. Alright. We have to take a note of it.
Yeah.
Alright.
It's scary, but not scary in a way.
The sergeant, when you get there, the sergeant will explain everything.
Yeah.
So you got any questions, you'll answer. Because basically there's a custody sergeant here that looks after.
His focus remained on the fact that he had left Keeley alive at the phone box. However, upon searching his phone, his GPS revealed that he had visited the murder scene 7 times that day. Despite his attempts to maintain his innocence, the CCTV footage showed him and Keeley at Tamworth Rugby Club later than he had claimed to have left her. His jacket and bank card were discovered in the park, and Keeley's post-mortem examination yielded Street's DNA. With this evidence, he was charged with Keeley's sexual assault and murder. Wesley initially maintained his innocence throughout the trial by saying that he was so drunk that he misreported the events of the evening. He claimed that he had left her happy and that she looked to be in complete happiness, but he later claimed in court that he had accidentally killed her while having consensual sex in the park. It was evident that he kept modifying his claims to fit the facts that were put out. Prior to making that confession, he had claimed that Keeley and him were childhood friends who had never considered romance. He also claimed that Keeley had taunted and flirted with him as they walked home, leading them to end up in the park. Wesley continued by describing how his GPS location indicated that he had visited the murder scene multiple times that day. He claimed that after killing her by mistake in a fit of lust, he returned to the scene to cover Keeley with leaves after disposing of the body in the pond. He claimed that he didn't know how to act or explain Keeley's death to others because he felt ashamed of himself and was scared to tell the police and everyone else why he didn't disclose the truth before Keeley's body was found. But according to the prosecution's evidence, Wesley convinced Keeley to go to the rugby club next to the park while they were out for a smoke. When they got there, he forced himself on her and choked her while she struggled to get free. Furthermore, the jury suggested it was impossible for him to kill her while they were doing intimate love, as it would have taken more than a few seconds for her to pass away. He carried her to the pond, covered her with branches, and left for home when she passed away. Though more horrifying proof of Wesley's terrible character came to light prior to the sentencing date, the evidence that was presented to the members of the jury was sufficient to find him guilty. Because of the seriousness of the case, media sources posted information about the trial quickly, which inadvertently caused women who had previously been Wesley's victims to respond. Wesley represented himself in court as a young man who had made innocent mistakes. His father also stated that he was autistic and required help to comprehend the trial. However, 3 women who had been his sexual assault victims came forward to destroy the last of the scented candles. He had sexually abused 3 girls, a 16-year-old in 2015, a 15-year-old in 2017, and a 20-year-old just months before Keeley passed away. These 3 were the only victims who had the guts to come forward, despite the fact that investigations suggest there may have been more. One of them testified in court that she had battled the disgusting thoughts that nearly overtook her, and said she didn't think she would ever be able to move past it. After hearing Keeley's case, she couldn't hold back any longer and reported it to the authorities. She stated that looking back, I realized that it was clearly not okay if anything made you feel physically ill to your stomach. I was hesitant to tell anyone, though. The third survivor talked about how she went to his residence and felt guilty over the incident. She also claimed, I didn't have the guts to tell anyone until I learned the tragic news about Keeley. It was at that point that I felt the full force of what had happened to me. But by that time, I had already dealt with my grief in what I believe was a negative manner. Lead prosecutor Hannah Sway characterized Wesley's offense as a pattern of crime. Rather than an isolated incident, it was a prolonged pattern of behavior. She said that Wesley was a man who pursued his goals regardless of the repercussions, and that his innocent look and amiable manner made his victims less fearful of him. His victims were reportedly friends or acquaintances. It's simple to create a stereotypical picture of a criminal, but we frequently fail to see this intelligent young man as well as his many well-known and well-liked acquaintances. The lead detective on the case, Detective Inspector Shirley Hannon, also called him a crafty and manipulative person. Keeley clearly trusted him to walk her home that evening. He set himself up so that he could pray over her before killing and taking advantage of her. After that, he proceeded to revolve the investigation around himself, lying to the police, her family, and her friends to assure them that she was okay, and altering his stories when new information became available. Wesley received a 30-year jail term without the possibility of release. The judge explained during the sentencing how Wesley had taken Keeley's lovely life and used it to fulfill his own ambitions. She had lost the chance to help young children achieve their life goal, and her family had lost their cherished daughter, sister, and other family members. Additionally, Keeley's family members said they would never recover enough to forgive Wesley. According to Debbie, Keeley's mother, justice will never be served by the verdict of this trial. We are unable to extend forgiveness to Keeley since she was a young woman just beginning out in life, and the kindest, most kind, innocent person you could ever meet. Keeley Bunker's untimely death serves as a sobering reminder that we might never fully know someone, their intentions, morals, and what lie beneath their charming faces. In the alley's shadows, a young blonde lady hesitated at the threshold of her adultery. But before she could cross, fate's hand intervened. In an instant, her life was extinguished by an unknown assailant, leaving her dreams and desires unfulfilled, forever frozen in the moment of temptation. This is the terrible story of Holly Bobo. Come and join us as we unravel this horrific crime.
Finally, after 6.5 years, I do feel that we got justice for our daughter. Thank you.
There were only about 2,500 people living in the rural Tennessee town of Decatur County, and farms and woodlands dominated the surrounding terrain. Holly Bobo, a 20-year-old nursing student, grew up in this place. Karen and Dana Bobo were Holly's parents. Clint, Holly's elder brother, was 5 years her senior. Holly's mother, Karen, was an instructor at Scotts Hill Elementary. Whitney Duncan, a country singer, is Holly's cousin and the family's musical link. Holly performed as a singer as well. Growing up in a Christian home, Holly had a great bond with her mother. Those who got to know her better than her surface-level timidity discovered a lively and humorous personality. Not only did Holly have familial ties, but she also had a lover, Drew Scott, who was looking forward to a future with her. Holly was excited to begin a career in healthcare and was studying nursing at the University of Tennessee. Holly's goals for the future were to start a life with Drew and change the world as a nurse. One day, Holly got up early on the morning of April 13, 2011. At 4:30 a.m., she had already risen and was studying for her exam, which was scheduled for 8 a.m. Her mother, Karen, had made her a packed lunch before she left for work. Her boyfriend, Drew, called her at 7:30 in the morning to tell her that he was hunting turkey on Holly's grandmother's property. Following their brief exchange, Holly packed up her things and headed to the driveway so she could leave for school. James Barnes, a neighbor, heard what sounded like an argument next door at 7:45 in the morning. A woman's voice could be heard yelling for someone to stop. James looked into the woods, intrigued and alarmed, but the cause of the disturbance remained obscure. The next terrifying noise that chilled him to the bone was screams. James, troubled by what he had heard, called his mother right away and asked her to tell Holly's mother, Karen, about the unsettling noise he had heard in their home. Meanwhile, Holly's brother Clint was awakened from sleep by the family dog's incessant barking. When he looked into what was going on, he heard tense foreign voices. He noticed two figures in the driveway having what appeared to be a furious argument as he lifted the window blinds. He deduced that Drew, Holly's boyfriend, was the other figure after realizing that one of them was hers. Because of the stranger's camouflage clothing, Clint thought the man was Drew. Clint knew that same morning Drew was going to go hunting for turkeys because they had spoken the previous evening. Clint was perplexed and hesitant to break up what may have been a fight between the two. Since he was unsure of the circumstances and had just woken up, he tried to get in touch with his mother to find out if Holly didn't have school. He tried calling, but she didn't pick up, so he texted her in the hopes that she would. Karen was informed of the specifics by James's mother in the meantime, and she promptly called home. Clint responded asking about Holly's plans for school because she was out with Drew. That was when Karen became aware that something was wrong. Still, she was positive it was not Drew, so she told his son Clint to go fetch a shotgun and shoot the guy right away. Perplexed, Clint asked his mother whether she would like him to shoot Drew, but Karen hung up the receiver. Then her son went to the back door and saw the man and Holly making their way into the woods. Holly wasn't being pulled. She was walking on her own initiative. In response to his mother's request, Clint went through an open garage and got a rifle. Outside, he noticed a blood puddle next to Holly's car. His worry drove him to contact 911. Karen called emergency services in distress at the same time. She drove herself home with a friend since she was in a panic. Karen came at 8:10 a.m., followed by the authorities. Desperate to find her daughter, Karen called out for Holly as she made her way through the woods. Soon after, Holly's father Dana returned home to see the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, and U.S. Marshals all over the property. But the situation appeared disorganized and disorderly, with individuals standing around aimlessly, as if they didn't know what to do. Dana became agitated and begged the authorities to take immediate action so that Holly may return. Dana struggled with the idea that the kidnapper might have known his daughter, with suspicion hanging over someone who might have known Holly, her routine, and the area. Afterwards, the detectives verified that Holly's bloodstain was, in fact, the one in the garage. This confirmed that the woman was in danger, so the entire community of Decatur County rallied together to find her. Day after day, thousands of volunteers, search dogs, aircraft, and authorities scoured the area in an effort to find the missing woman. In an effort to locate Holly's cell phone, the police also contacted AT&T. After following the ping, they discovered that her phone had traveled through Decatur County, first moving north toward a forested region close to Interstate 40, and then taking a different path that led them south. The cell phone stopped moving on Gooch Road between 8:30 and 9 a.m. Clint found himself under investigation as the police quickly investigated the potential that the culprit might be inside the residence. In an effort to dispel any suspicions, authorities looked into him straight away and discovered what may have been scratches on his body. His phone was tracked, his computer was inspected, and he took 2 polygraph exams. He was eventually cleared of any role in his sister's disappearance. In the days and weeks following the kidnapping, a trail of evidence was found along rural roads. Her mother's packed lunch for her that morning, together with her homework, notepad, and phone, were all strewn about the place. After Holly was kidnapped for a week, the neighborhood came together for a somber vigil, holding out hope and offering prayers for her safe return. Decatur County, determined to bring Holly home, held fast to the solidarity that typified small-town communities in the face of uncertainty. The names Zach Adams, his brother Dylan, cousin Jason Autry, and friend Shane Austin emerged as key players in the inquiry of Holly's kidnapping over the course of several weeks. These males had a terrible reputation for using illegal drugs and were well known in the neighborhood as delinquents. Zach Adams was the only member of the group that the cops noticed. He had a lengthy criminal record that included violence, robbery, and arrests for offenses involving illegal substances. He had even threatened to kill his grandparents in 2005 and shot his own mother in the knee in 2004. Given Zach's turbulent past, the police made the decision to visit his residence. Zach angrily denied having anything to do with Holly's disappearance, even in the face of the suspicions that surrounded him. He offered an alibi by saying that on the morning Holly vanished, he was at home with his brother Dylan and girlfriend Rebecca Earp. The police released him since there was insufficient evidence to make an arrest. The investigators turned their attention on Terry Britt, a registered criminal who resided close to Holly's residence in Decatur County. Britt had been incarcerated for kidnapping and other illegal activities for a considerable period of his life. He had a reputation for picking out blonde, youthful, and blue-eyed ladies, much like Holly. Holly vanished one day, and his address in northern Decatur County was in the general direction of her phone. Britt's first reaction upon the police knocking on his door was a preemptive denial. He had already declared his innocence and stated that he had not taken advantage of anyone before the police had even said a word. According to Britt's alibi, he was in the yard with his wife, purchasing a bathtub, but there was no record of the sale in the store. Authorities secured a search warrant as their suspicions grew. They brought in cadaver dogs to search his property. The dogs indicated possible locations in 2 of Britt's cars and on several of the tools in his home. Even after obtaining these objects for DNA analysis, no solid proof emerged. In an attempt to learn more about the case, authorities wiretapped Britt's phone and bugged his home in the hopes of recording any potentially damning exchanges. But since there were no breakthroughs from the spying, many people questioned whether Britt should be cleared of all charges. But then there was a taped exchange between Britt and TBI investigator Terry Dykus.
She's young, pretty, perfect, somewhat body. Okay, like a toy. He can't wait to get her to wherever he's going to take her to, because he's wanting that body. But here comes the reality. Now I've got a body. What am I going to do with it? If you keep it, you got to feed it. You got to hide it. And if you kill it, what are you going to do with it?
When the suspect seemed to be having disturbing dreams about taking Holly hostage, Britt insisted on his innocence in spite of the upsetting material, and detectives had a difficult time establishing a strong connection between him and Holly's abduction. Later, in Britt's safe, a handwritten receipt for the bathtub was found. Investigators chose to distance themselves from Terry Britt because the case had reached a dead end. The inquiry appeared to be at a standstill for 3 years, until a noteworthy breakthrough occurred in February 2014. One of the 4 guys who had been questioned regarding Holly's abduction, Zach Adams, was in trouble once more. He was charged with robbery this time around, as well as threatening to shoot his girlfriend's sister. Zach was imprisoned due to these allegations. Dylan, his brother, had his own legal troubles due to gun theft while he was imprisoned. Dylan's IQ was below average, and he had a learning problem. His grandfather observed that he frequently mixed up the facts and tales. Despite this, he was considered sufficiently self-sufficient by the authorities because he obtained a driver's license. Dylan finally reached a plea agreement that resulted in his release from the gun charges. The condition stipulated that he would live with a retired police officer, who happened to be a friend of the Bobo family. A call to emergency services 5 weeks after Dylan moved in with the retired police officer revealed additional details about the case, which was already complicated. Dylan said he knew what had happened to Holly. In his story, he claimed to have seen Holly early on April 13th in Zach's living room, sitting in a green chair with a pink shirt on. 2 other people were in the room, Shane, their acquaintance, and Jason, his cousin. Dylan went on to say that these individuals had used Holly, even recording the unsettling behaviors on camera. Zach had been making creepy jokes about Holly's disappearance for more than 3 years, claiming with confidence that the police would never find her. There have even been rumors that he boasted about taking advantage of Holly. According to his evidence, he had videotaped himself doing disgusting things with her, which corroborated Dylan's account. Law enforcement was unable to locate the purported videotape nevertheless. Even though the alleged videotape was never found and Dylan later withdrew his first confession due to claims of coercion, Dylan, Zach, Jason, and Shane were all arrested as a result of these admissions. It was eventually discovered that Holly's mother, Karen, had taught Zach and Jason when they were in elementary school. Shane received immunity on April 30th, 2014, in return for his assistance. But this immunity was taken away after only 3 weeks because of claims that he had stopped cooperating. A local man named Larry Stone made a somber find on September 13, 2014, while out in the woods looking for ginseng 5 months later. A human head and a pail full of human bones were found. A bullet wound was piercing the skull from the rear through the left cheekbone. It was established that these bones belonged to Holly Bobo. Personal belongings, including purses, lipstick, pens, and even Holly's inhaler, were discovered next to the bone material. The emotional toll that Holly's family was taking was demonstrated during the trial, when Karen fainted upon seeing the retrieved items. One of the suspects, Shane, was discovered dead in a hotel room in February 2015 after committing suicide while the inquiry was ongoing. In the course of their 3-year court battle, Zach, Dylan, and Jason, the 3 surviving suspects in Holly's case, entered not guilty pleas to charges of kidnapping, criminal physical behavior, and murder. Investigators were ferociously pursuing any confessions from the defendants during this time. Following years of adamantly claiming his innocence, Jason reached an agreement with the prosecution in 2017. He entered into an agreement to testify against the other accused in the September 2017 trial, in exchange for an 8-year sentence on counts of aggravated kidnapping and solicitation to commit murder. Jason's testimony contained a narrative that differed from what Dylan had previously said. Jason claims that when he arrived at Shane's residence, he expected to see illegal substances being made, but instead, he discovered that Holly had already been abducted and attacked by Zach, Dylan, and Shane. Jason said he saw Dylan set fire to stuff in a big barrel as Zach was waiting for his pickup truck. Zach then allegedly asked Jason to assist him in burying a body that was covered in a blanket in the bed of his truck. In return, Jason requested recreational drugs and consented to help Zach conceal Holly's body. While they were traveling, he observed that the truck was missing shovels and a pickaxe, so Jason suggested that they throw the body into the ocean. He gutted Holly in order to keep the body submerged, since he said that her intestines were the only thing keeping her afloat. After that, they planned to dispose of Holly's body by driving to an abandoned location close to the Tennessee River. While traveling to this place, Zach snidely boasted that he had taken advantage of Holly in Shane's grandmother's barn, and that Dylan and Shane had done the same. When they got to the lonely place by the river, Jason claimed to have seen Holly's foot move as they laid her body down. A faint sound of distress emanated from the blanket as well. He informed Zach of this, which alarmed him, and Zach took a revolver out of his car and shot her in the head. The gun fired 3 times, and they heard a boat approaching from nearby. In fear that the group would be discovered, they quickly put the body back in the truck. Zach allegedly approached Jason after this incident and asked to kill his brother Dylan, among other heinous requests. The goal was to stop Dylan from talking about what had happened with Holly, who was often talking about it. Zach promised Jason a share of his money after his affluent grandfather passed away in exchange. Accepting Zach's offer, Jason took Dylan fishing in a bass boat on the Tennessee River with the intention of shooting and killing him there. But another fisherman, who knew Dylan's grandfather and recognized Dylan, disrupted his plot. Jason's goals were foiled by this meeting, and he never tried it again. Jason further alleged that Zach had stated they were at Holly's house that fatal morning teaching Clint how to prepare drugs. But they got there early and they ran into Holly, who let out a scream at seeing them. This was the reason behind their kidnapping of the woman. Clint refuted the claims. After all, he had been cleared when he first became a subject of attention. Jason's testimony made Zach the only person who might be considered a suspect. But there were a number of problems with Zach's engagement in Holly's situation. He was kilometers away from the place where they had traced Holly's phone when authorities plotted his phone's ping to Holly's that morning. Nevertheless, a number of witnesses insisted that they saw Zach kill Holly. A noteworthy witness was Rebecca, who was his girlfriend at the time. Jennifer Thompson, Zach's lawyer, tried to undermine Rebecca during the trial by bringing up her suspected drug use and making suggestions that she had a hazy recall. Thompson went on to suggest that Rebecca had lied because TBI investigator Valerie Trout had threatened her. Attorney Thompson said that the police had unfairly singled out his client and that they were determined to find someone to blame for Holly's death. In spite of all of this, as well as the fact that Zach Adams did not match Clint's description of the abductor, Zach Adams was found guilty on September 22, 2017, of Holly Bobo's kidnapping, assault, and murder. Zach was initially going to be executed, but his petition to be given a life term in prison was accepted. Zach filed an appeal for a new trial 5 years later in 2022, but the Tennessee Appeal Court turned it down. Dylan Adams, Zach's brother, entered an Alford plea in 2018 to a reduced charge of murder facilitation, which led to the 35-year sentence he was then serving. However, in September 2020, Jason Autry was allowed to leave prison. But a few months later, he was charged with a federal firearms offense in 2021, bringing him fresh legal issues. The Holly Bobo Act, which aims to enhance the Tennessee Endangered Persons Alert Program in honor of Holly, was sponsored by Tennessee legislators in 2020. The measure raises the previous age limit of 18 to 21 and permits the TBI to issue endangered person alerts for any missing individual under that age. This was put into action in January of 2021. Holly's family stated that in spite of the difficulties and legal complications, they thought the correct people had been imprisoned. After Zach was found guilty and given a sentence, Karen spoke to him immediately. It's noteworthy that Karen urged Clint to shoot Holly's companion over the phone that morning. Though she had merely been informed by a neighbor that they had heard a scream coming from the Bobo property, it's almost as if she understood what was going on. Who did she think Holly was with? Why was she so certain that Clint should get a gun and kill somebody, when she didn't even know what was going on at the time? I guess these questions will remain unknown.
Finally, after 6.5 years, I do feel that we got justice for our daughter. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for sticking with us today. Check out this other thrilling videos for you to watch, and while you're at it, hit that subscribe and like button, and let us know down below your thoughts on today's case. Until then, take care.